every week now there's been an exchange of bodies where the Russians get the bodies of dead Russian soldiers returned to them from the Ukraine side. I think the exchange last week was the Russians got 19 dead Russian soldiers. The Russians turned over 1,000 dead Ukrainians. That is approaching like a 50-to-1 casualty differential. And that wasn't an aberration. That the same pattern has been repeated now since the last Istanbul talks when they agreed to exchange bodies. And I guess the last one was like 6 weeks ago, maybe 6-7 weeks ago. But the point is the gross number of dead on the Ukrainian side, and it's reflected because they're having to build new cemeteries. Russia's not. And so if you ignore objective facts like that, but I had a question for you. If you took a brand new recruit into the Army, how long would it take to get them trained where they could operate a tank under your command?
Just at the crew level, we could probably get a good 4 or 5 months of that, probably.
Yeah. So 4 to 5 months. That's not what Ukraine's doing. In fact, whenever they try to bring guys together for training, the Russians hit them with a missile, an Iskander or a Kinzhal. So the problem they now have for Ukraine, and it's not solvable in the short term, is where do you get the trained manpower? That is, you just having a warm body out there doesn't do you any good.
You can just throw anybody in a uniform that's not a trained soldier. That's very clear.
Yeah. So, Ukraine has no solution to that. The only solution would be they're going to have to take their people out of the country and in a secure facility where they could be trained, for 3 to 4 months. But then what happens? They're in Poland or Romania or France, and they're going.
And they don't come back.
Yeah. Hey, I like it here.
Yeah, nobody's shooting at me here. Yeah. And that just kind of underscores because Zelensky's in charge of all that. He's the commander in chief. And the last comment here I want to make from that Spectator magazine I thought was the most damning because it was from a former Zelensky cabinet official. It says perhaps the most shocking of all the recent. No, not that one, Gary. I think the one you had up there. Yeah, the Ukraine has two enemies, two Vladimirs, Zelensky and Putin, says a former Ukrainian cabinet minister, once a strong Zelensky supporter. That's key. Putin is destroying Ukraine from the outside, but Zelensky is destroying it from within by destroying its will to fight and its morale. Human rights are being trampled on. There is pressure against political opponents. Rich and influential people who could support opposition are being expropriated, and opposition media is being silenced. And the irony that this Putinification of Ukraine is being funded by the West. So that is some real bitterness in there that, listen, I used to support this guy, but now he is Putin. He has become Putin. So now then we got the actual Putin bombing Ukraine from the outside, and then we got this wannabe Putin on the inside. So that just shows you how demoralized so many people in Ukraine are. And then they see the West doing exactly what you just talked about here, whether it was Max Boot or these generals or Hodges, any of these other guys. And how horrible is it? We talk about this a lot, how horrible it is for these poor Ukraine soldiers who were sent to die in these pointless battles that can only just slow the death and slow the loss, but it can't reverse anything. So their lives are literally being thrown away for nothing. And yet we cheer it on at this level.
Well, there's Ukraine. It's I think we can now realize, thanks in part to Tulsi Gabbard's release of those documents surrounding Russiagate, that Ukraine is simply a pawn. It's a tool that's being used as part of some broader plan, an intent to destroy Russia. We saw that with Tim Weiner, the author of The Legacy of Ashes. He wrote a piece in Foreign Policy, one of the deep state journals that comes out. And this came out before Tulsi released this information. And in it, he was touting basically the Trumps, and Trump and his team are toadies of Putin. They're stooges. They're being used. And he was, to make that case, he was talking to a recently retired guy named Sylvester, who was the director of operations. So DDO is the one that oversees all of the U.S. intelligence officers working overseas to recruit spies. But in the course of writing this article, he told the story of Tomas Rakusan. Rakusan had been Sylvester's predecessor. And here's Rakusan. He's the head of the CIA's spies. He's the one that sends them out to recruit spies. He's the one that oversees the gathering of all human intelligence. And what he said in there was that Rakusan was being quoted as he was going to do anything to get back at the Russians for having stolen the 2016 election. And he was ordering his people, and I'm quoting now, to go out and recruit terrorists to attack Russia. Now you got to stop there and step back and go, whoa, wait a second. Here is this top guy. There's nobody above, the only body above him is the director of the CIA and then the president, okay? He's only one step from the president. This guy in charge of the CIA in 2016 and in 2017 genuinely believed that Russia had stolen the election, even though they had clear intelligence that that was a lie. And based on that lie, they're building 24 laboratories, facilities in Ukraine. For what purpose? Not to benefit the health of the Ukrainians, not to provide jobs for Ukrainians. So there was something deep, dark, and evil going on through all of this. And here you had this war. In fact, this went on while Trump was still president. It was happening under his nose. And he didn't know about it. And you got to come back and even ask the question, why the hell didn't his director of CIA release those documents, or his director of national intelligence, both Grinnell and Ratcliffe? Where the hell were they?
Yeah, that was a question I've been asking as well.
Yeah. So
listen, we're running short on time here, and there's one more thing I want to get to, because that's kind of a positive thing that these information's coming out now from the Trump administration. But there's some other problems about this whole Epstein thing, which is roiling just all kinds of stuff inside, and it's trying to be suppressed. You have on sonar21.com, you said that $1 billion is not a hoax.
Yeah.
What's going on with this Epstein thing?
When you go back and look at all the money that's been paid out to victims,
and that's what that is right there. That's a list of the money paid out.
Yeah, and so Leon Black and Prince Andrew, they had to pay money to victims of the sex trafficking, of the abuse. What's really going on with this is there's a lot of diversion being put out by Trump. Part of the problem is Trump had a 15-year relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not suggesting that he was a frequent visitor to the island, but Michael Wolff, the author, says clearly he's seen photographs of Trump with topless women, topless girls sitting on his lap. So you've got that, but the real thing here is the failure of the Department of Justice to take the statements, the evidence from all of these girls who have gotten civil settlements in many cases, and turn that into criminal indictments, because the names, they keep saying, oh, there's no list, or of course there's no list yet, but you do have a lot of names that have been raised in affidavits by these girls who were trafficked, and that requires investigation to determine, is it true or not? Can you corroborate it? Is it just one girl, identifying one individual with no proof? Or do you have 6 different girls saying, yeah, that guy did the same to me? And then can you corroborate that he was on that island, but based on travel law or the list of passengers on the plane? So they're right, but that's the point. DOJ has refused to do an investigation.
Let me ask you this: other than Ghislaine Maxwell, has anybody associated with this? And apparently, there's like 200 I guess, women that were abused at some point over the years it was going on with this. Has anyone been convicted of anything and paid a price?
Yeah, Jean-Luc Brunel. He was he came up with, he worked with Epstein and had a modeling agency. He went to prison in France and hung himself. There's a theme emerging here, and there was one other individual in Europe, but that's been it. Four people
and then
told.
Prince Andrew kind of got censured, I guess, to put on house arrest inside the palace, I suppose, something to that effect. But otherwise, all these hundreds, and God only knows how many people actually went out to these places and did stuff.
Right.
Is that information knowable? Who all
Yes.
went to the island and stuff?
Yeah, it is. I mean, they've got the list of the flight logs. You've got pilots on those planes. They've been interviewed. You had even stewardesses, flight attendants on those planes that have been interviewed. You had other employees. They were all interviewed and deposed. And so there is a vast mountain of actual evidence out there that at least needs to be looked at and looked at hard. The problem is the charges would be brought against people who are very prominent. Robert Kraft, the owner of the New England Patriots, his name has been identified by many of the women as someone that they were compelled to have sexual intercourse with. So now Kraft can deny that, and then that's where it's important to get into a situation of looking at actual evidence where people don't say they were unfairly maligned. I mean, you had Alan Dershowitz saying, he's admitted openly in public, well, he went to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion in New York City. He got a massage, but he kept his underwear on. He made a point of that. I kept my underwear on. What a freak show.
Yeah. So what I mean, I was talking about this recently, that when you look at Trump all the way through, and I mean from 2015 when he first started running all the way through, almost nothing ever spooks him. Nothing ever. It's like water off a duck's back. The whole Access Hollywood tape. I mean, he didn't sweat about a drop on that. But he looks spooked on this one, and I've never seen him like that. And what do you make of that as a CIA analyst?
Well, because if Michael Wolff is to be believed, and the reason I think he has credibility is Epstein had approached Wolff about writing a book about Epstein back before Epstein, got arrested. And this was back in 2014, 2015. And so Epstein showed Wolff photos. In one, and I'm quoting Wolff now, there were a bunch of topless girls, and Donald Trump had a stain on the front of his pants, and the girls were laughing at him. So, he might. Now, I'm not suggesting that Trump was a visitor to the island or that there's sexual blackmail, because candidly, if the Biden administration had any of that material, I don't doubt for a minute they would have put it out.
Yeah, I do doubt for a minute, though, because you can't selectively pull that stuff out. And then the evidence suggests that there's probably plenty of prominent D's on that list that they can't, you know what I mean? It's like actually expose them all or expose none of them.
Well, actually, you could lose that other evidence. That wouldn't be the first time that they've destroyed evidence.
Well, okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, you don't, because if you release that, you don't have to say, oh, yeah, we got a bunch of other stuff with all these other Democrats. But you're right. There are a number of Democrats on it. I mean, Bill Richardson, who's now deceased, he was listed on it, and Bill had quite a reputation for womanizing when he was, governor and then senator. That has Trump spooked, correct, and it wouldn't be so much of an issue if his son, Don Jr., hadn't made a point about it. We've got to get to the bottom of this. If Dan Bongino hadn't been screaming at the top of his lungs on his radio show, we got to get to the bottom of this. There's dirty stuff here. And if Kash Patel himself. So, they brought it on themselves. And now they're involved with the cover-up. What's the reason for the cover-up? Is it to protect Israel? I believe that's part of it. Is it to protect Trump? I believe that's part of it. But the bottom line is there has not been a legitimate, full-scale investigation of this material in order to hold people accountable. They want to say, now that Epstein's dead, it's, the main guy's gone, so let's
it go away.
move on. Move along, folks. Nothing to see here.